I will be okay because I'm actually at the airport waiting for my flight. So I hope I will be fine. You can hear me well.
Sorry, coming in.
Okay. Thank you.
We will start in 1 minute, no?
Hi, everybody.
Hi,
Nice to meet you.
nice to meet you too. Okay, I will start, no? Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, eminent speakers, and participants from all over the world. First of all, on behalf of the organizer, Mannheim City, I would like to welcome you to the 9 Urban Thinker Campus, or UTC of Mannheim City, with the theme of the challenges of climate change in 5 continents. Interestingly, 7 years ago, exactly on this date, 17 February 2016, Mannheim City organized its first UTC. And I believe that organizing 9 UTCs in these 7 years in the light of localizing SDGs is a huge success for Mannheim City. Some of these UTCs concentrate on city-to-city learning, like this one, which basically shows learning from each other is one of the key factors to overcome the existing barriers in the first place, and then forging global partnership in the second place can help us to empower each other on implementing the SDGs on the ground. My name is Parisa Kloos, Executive Director of Resilient Urban Planning and Development Company in Germany. I'm pleased to be invited to moderate the opening session and the first Urban Lab. I'm honored to work closely with the City of Mannheim in organizing several UTCs with the aim of taking action towards implementation of the new urban agenda and sustainable development goals of UN Habitat on the ground. This Urban Thinker Campus will discuss the challenges of climate change in 2 urban labs with focus on heat waves and flooding. Different cities from 5 continents have been invited to share their challenges, best practices, and goals in managing heat waves and flooding in their cities. Before we start the Urban Labs, I'm honored to have the opportunity to address 3 distinguished keynote speakers. It is with a special excitement that I'm pleased to welcome His Excellency Dr. Peter Koos, Mayor of Mannheim, to open the 9th UTC Mannheim and give an introduction to the challenges of climate change from Mannheim's perspective. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Peter Koos. Dr. Koos, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Kloos. Dear colleagues and friends, I'm very delighted to welcome you to the 9th Mannheim Urban Thinkers Campus. As you mentioned, exactly 7 years ago, the first Urban Thinkers Campus took place in Mannheim with the title Urban Citizenship in a Nomadic World. It was our contribution to Habitat 3 and the new urban agenda. In the years since, we have learned so much from one another through this engaging format. UTCs are a powerful instrument to promote policy dialogues, identify solutions, and take action. And of course, our UTCs are anchored in our urban society, as we believe that bringing together local and global discussions is important for both levels. Collaboration, cohesion, exchange, and mutual support are the guiding themes of our Urban Thinkers Campus today. Colleagues and partners from 5 different continents, Asia, Africa, South America, North America, and Europe, are coming together to talk about the challenge of climate change related to heat waves in Urban Lab 1 and floods in Urban Lab 2. Dear colleagues, we are facing a time of change. We have to change to fight the climate change, and we need climate adaptation too. As cities and regions, we are key players in this adaptation process. Climate protection and climate adaptation are complex tasks. Municipal actors are confronted with a multitude of different issues. Initiating municipal climate protection or adaptation strategies, linking them to existing measures, finding funding opportunities, clarifying legal requirements, finding partners, expanding the scope for action, developing support programs, activating people, finding personnel, training people, and integrating all measures into our social responsibilities. And along the way, we keep facing the goal of becoming resilient. Resilience in this context means that people must learn to live with the risks and consequences of global warming, adapt their behavior to these realities, and prevent future crises. The topic of last year's UTC with our partners in Kuala Lumpur was the implementation of Urban Climate Change Action Plan in Kuala Lumpur. The event consisted of an exchange between our 2 cities regarding our climate action plans. In Mannheim, with our mission statement, Mannheim 2030, we have set the ambitious strategic goal of being a climate-friendly, climate-resilient, and, in perspective, climate-neutral city. To achieve these goals, measures in both climate change mitigation and climate impact adaptation need to be implemented at an accelerated pace. The city has re-emphasized climate change adaptation with the strategic goal of being a climate resilient city, specifically in the context of heat, heavy rain, and storms. At the heart of this work in Mannheim is our local Green Deal, which was the subject of our UTC 2 years ago. With the local Green Deal, Mannheim is concretizing its transformation process to localize the SDGs. We consistently follow the path from mission to action on the way to a climate-neutral, sustainable, and inclusive city. We are developing a tentative but persistent approach to local climate policy, from which we hope other cities can learn. And we want to share our lessons learned. Action at the local level is needed to address the pressing threat of climate change, and we will be stronger if we work together to find innovative solutions. This is why I'm so happy to take part in discussions like this one. And we recognize that this work is more important than ever. In the past few years, we have all experienced hotter summers and longer heat waves. Even at night, the air then barely cools down. These periods are a strain on everyone and can lead to health problems. An estimated 4,500 people died in Germany last year due to heat exhaustion. But this is in perspective, this is significantly higher than the number of traffic fatalities in the same period. With just over 1,000 hours of sunshine each year, Mannheim is located in one of the warmest regions in Germany. Last year, we had 49 days with temperatures above 30 degrees, and we had 21 so-called tropical nights where temperatures never sank below 20 degrees. This is a great challenge for Mannheim, as our infrastructure and our residents are not yet sufficiently prepared. We are especially concerned about heat-vulnerable groups, including the elderly and children. Of course, residents who work outdoors face also special risks and can no longer continue their work without some restrictions. Even our local flora and fauna are at risk. Native species are struggling to adapt to the heat and find themselves in increasing competition with invasive species. These problems, coupled with extreme weather events caused by the rising temperatures, will only get worse. Experts project that we could face an average temperature increase of 3.6 degrees Celsius by 2100. So what are we doing? We are following our 2030 mission statement and working to make the city climate resilient in order to be able to respond appropriately to climate impacts. At the same time, we are aware of our global responsibility. To this end, we have set ourselves the ambitious goal of becoming climate neutral by 2030 within the European Mission 100 Climate Neutral Cities. We will nevertheless experience considerably more heat stress in the future. In 2019, Mannheim set up the Adaptation to Climate Change Plan. This plan is the city's answer to the climate change protections. It was set up in a participation process. The plan defines more than 70 measures and has a long-term perspective. All measures contribute to our goal of mastering the challenges of climate change for the city's residents, economy, infrastructure, and nature. A central component of this comprehensive plan deals exclusively with the topic of heat. Mannheim is one of the first cities in Germany to create a so-called Heat Action Plan. This contains a bundle of measures for effective protection during heat events, including technical organizational measures to warn residents quickly and effectively, low threshold information materials such as the heat protection brochure, cool hats for cool months or the hot months, or the city map with cool places. Structural protection measures like drinking water stations, sun protection on buildings, and tiny forests. These are combined with long-term urban development measures like minimizing land consumption, forest conversion, and greening of our paved spaces. Last but not least, and this is particularly important to me, the city administration does not do all this on its own. We promote dialogue with residents and businesses and support them in combating the climate impacts of heat waves. For example, we have set up a funding program at the Climate Protection Agency to promote greening and depaving measures. These efforts are important building blocks on the path to climate resilience and adaptation to the effects of heat. I hope that this gave you a little insight into the measures taken by the city of Mannheim to meet the challenges of heat waves. Now, I'm looking forward to today's discussion in the two urban labs, one on the challenges of heat waves and two on the challenges of flooding. The results of this Urban Thinkers Campus will be documented and summarized to provide an overall global view of challenges, strategies, and solutions. In doing so, we will also address and work out possible support needs. I'm sure that today's 9th Urban Thinkers Campus Mannheim will give us new perspectives and inspiration for dealing with the challenges of climate change. I wish all participants an exciting discussion and look forward to the results. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kors, for this, to sharing with us this successful achievement of Mannheim. It's really interesting to see that how Mannheim is working in this field and how what kind of progress you have in this regard. Thank you very much for your achievement and of course for sharing these achievements. Now I would like to invite our second distinguished keynote speaker, Dr. Christine Auclair, leader of the World Urban Campaign of UN Habitat. She joined us from Nairobi to give us an introduction about the World Urban Campaign and also sharing the vision behind World Urban Campaign. Dr. Auclair, please, the floor is yours. Welcome. You're muted.
Hi, I hope you can hear me now.
Yes.
Thank you, Parisa. Good morning, good afternoon, Lord Mayor, Excellencies. It's really a great pleasure and honor to attend the opening of this 9 Urban Thinkers Campus in Mannheim. Thank you, Lord Mayor, for your leadership in the World Urban Campaign of the United Nations Human Settlements Program, and of course, your continuous engagement in the Urban Thinkers process. Also, I would like to congratulate the city of Mannheim and all the partners of this campus, partners also of the World Urban Campaign who participate in this campus. I recognize a resilient urban planning and development RUPD with Parisa Close, and Analia Pastran will speak later with Smartly, social entrepreneurship in SDGs. And you are bringing a lot of speakers from all around the world. This is really impressive. Malaysia, Jordan, Egypt, Nicaragua, Namibia, Kosovo, to exchange and explore solutions on very hot topics, if I may say. Your theme is, of course, the biggest challenge of the time, climate change. At the last UN Climate Change Conference in Sharm el-Sheikh a few months ago, our Secretary General Antonio Guterres has warned everybody, and he said that we are on a highway to climate hell with our foot still on the accelerator. This is really bad. He said greenhouse gas emissions keep growing, global temperatures keep rising, and our planet is fast approaching tipping points that will make climate chaos irreversible. So while we have the war in Ukraine, other conflicts that cause dramatic impact all over the world, we still need to stay focused on climate change on a different timeline, of course, and at different scale. And we cannot put climate change on the back burner. Every year, climate disaster impact in cities at least 200 million people. People living in slum and informal settlement that are about 1 out of 7 people on Earth are most affected by climate change. And with extreme weather, sea level rise, their homes are at risk. We have also in question the increase of urban refugees in cities, and this is adding to the complexity. So this imperative, in this equation, in this context, the World Urban Campaign of UN Habitat has called to urgent action, and that was in 2021. And they had 8 principles on what cities should do. So let me list them very briefly. The first one is the city we need should reach net zero by 2050 and limits global warming to 1.5 degrees. The city we need should be resilient. It should develop strategies for coping, evolving future shocks and stresses, adopting green recovery plans and measures to help people to adapt and survive in crisis that affects their health, their well-being, their livelihood, and particularly the urban poor. The city we need has to be regenerative, and I think Mannheim has well understood that. It should restore, replenish energy, water, food system, air, and ecosystem. It has to be energy and resource efficient, low carbon, and reliant on renewable energy sources. Number 4, the city we need should thrive on nature and culture. It should recognize the limitation, the capacity of natural systems which support it. It should value biodiversity, ecosystem services for the role they play in health, environmental protection, aesthetic livability. It should incorporate cultural heritage, indigenous, traditional practices and techniques that are very strong, rich, and community-based solutions in climate change mitigation adaptation. Number 5, the city we need leaves no one behind. So I said that before, and this is strong because climate change is a poverty multiplier. It places the poor and marginalized at the heart of climate plans. It should put the poor at the heart of strategies and action and protect them, those who are most at risk. Number 6, the city we need has new pathways of sustainable living. We need to change the way we live. We need to value preservation and resource optimization. And we should improve, of course, waste management, generate clean, resource efficient energy, decarbonize the electric grid, enable a new generation, a next generation mobility. Number 7, the city we need adopts climate-proof planning. It sets emission reduction target strategies to reduce these emissions and have innovative urban design and mobility plans. And finally, the city we need has collaborative partnerships and mobilize resources to manage and achieve climate action and solutions together. So these imperatives were part of this call to action in 2021, and they are currently the focus of all urban actors today. And I would say Mannheim is really at the forefront of all of this. As such, Mannheim is really an emblematic game changer in that sense, committed to the citizens of Mannheim and following the path of sustainable cities. So Mannheim is really showing the way forward by bringing together all those who want to follow this path and believe that we cannot lose time any longer. So many cities are taking action, and we should recognize those, showcase initiative and good practices, recognize game changers all over Europe. And really, this is the spirit of this Urban Thinkers Campus that Mannheim is really following and showing. So we look forward to disseminate all the results of your campus, to build on that towards the World Urban Forum 12. It will be held in Cairo in March 2024. So we look forward to build that momentum, to continue having impact, double impact with you, with cities around the world, with the private sector, and with the national government. Thank you all for your good inputs in advance and deliberation. Thank you, Parisa. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Christine, for this really insightful points that you mentioned. And of course, congratulating also to Mannheim City for this great achievement they had. And now, last but not least, we have another distinguished guest, His Excellency Mr. Farzamin Sarkavi, Consul General of Malaysia in Frankfurt, Germany. Thank you very much for accepting our invitation. Mr. Sarkavi will share with us the bilateral relations between Malaysia and Germany. We are so excited to hear from you about these bilateral relations between two countries, which can, I believe, forge the partnership for further collaboration. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Sarkavi. Please, the floor is yours. Welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Klaus. Assalamualaikum, good day and salam sejahtera. Excellency, Lord Mayor, Dr. Peter Kurz, Dr. Christine Auclair, Project Leader of World Urban Campaign, Puan Noliza Hashim of Urbanize Malaysia, and panel of international experts, Stadt Mannheim officials. Thank you once again, Lord Mayor, Dr. Peter Kurz, Stadt Mannheim and UTC for inviting the Consulate General of Malaysia in Frankfurt. It is an honor to join you in this opening session and an opportunity to share Malaysia's perspectives on sustainable economic activities and our partnership with Germany and international partners in developing sustainable practices to jointly address climate issues. Ladies and gentlemen, Malaysia and Germany share excellent relations at all levels. Germany was among the first countries to recognize the young independent Malaya and establish diplomatic relations when we gained independence in 1957. Bilateral ties between Germany and Malaysia is on forward momentum. Economic cooperation driven by trade and investment activities is the key foundation of our relationship. I'm pleased to share that His Excellency President Frank-Walter Steinmeier is currently on his state visit to Malaysia, accompanied by German senior officials and a business delegation. Today, His Excellency President Steinmeier will meet His Majesty Sultan Abdullah and the Honorable Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim, Prime Minister of Malaysia, to discuss economic cooperation and other issues of mutual interest. Apart from meeting the captains of industry, the President will be visiting the state of Sarawak this weekend for engagements with biodiversity experts at the National Park and also Wildlife Center. Ladies and gentlemen, Malaysia remains committed to achieving the ultimate objective of UNFCCC and the Paris Agreement. Malaysia views the Paris Agreement as an accord that achieves the necessary balance with a consensus from both the developed and developing world. Malaysia firmly believes that to realize this effort, delivering financial support, capacity building, expertise, and technology to developing countries are crucial and cannot be overemphasized. For Malaysia, we are glad that Germany is our long-standing partner in this journey. Germany is Malaysia's largest trading and investment partner among the European Union member countries. From 1980 through to September 2022, a total of 646 projects with German participation have been approved in Malaysia. We thank the German private sector for their confidence in Malaysia as its long-standing trade and investment partner, and the German companies' contributions, including bringing the latest technologies for manufacturing and complementing our sustainability policies and objectives. Companies, among others, like Infineon Technologies, B. Brown Medical Industries, Osram Opto Semiconductors, Robert Bosch, Electric Solar, BASF, Schmidt and Clemens, Schott AG, Siemens, BMW, whether public listed in Germany and the Mittelstands, are playing an important role in supporting the development of our industries in sustainable practices through capacity building, transfer of technology, and efficient capital management, including local human resources. Malaysia is also dependent on external trade. Malaysia is currently listed among the top 25 trading nations in the world and in the top 5 among the members of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, or ASEAN. The EU is one of Malaysia's top trading partners, with Germany as the largest destination market for Malaysia. It is therefore necessary for Malaysian companies to align their policies on sustainability with the partners that they are trading with. We encourage sustainability reporting for our small and medium enterprises, SMEs, which can be helpful to articulate sustainability readiness when the prospects in the EU region approaches them. Besides, it is no longer an option. It is necessary to access the market, particularly for the EU. Ladies and gentlemen, for this to succeed, various preconditions must be fulfilled in terms of the market economy and technology, plus a functioning regulatory framework must also be in place. The commitment of the population is required. Support from the community in the form of public, private, and people partnership is needed to transform the industry. These also provide great social values, as 98% of businesses in Malaysia are the SMEs. We recognize that to compete in the global marketplace nowadays, it is necessary to be more responsible and sustainable. The Malaysian government, through our trade and investment agencies, are actively guiding our companies with the guidance they need to comply with the evolving trade legislation and standards in Europe. ESG forms one of the major themes in the 12th Malaysia Plan on advancing sustainability, with our commitment to become a carbon neutral nation by 2050. Malaysia's move to champion sustainability is timely, as Germany introduced its Supply Chain Due Diligence Act last month. Ladies and gentlemen, at the regional level, Germany is the main source of FDI in Southeast Asia as the producer of high-valued industrial products. Germany is home to about ASEAN is home to about 3,000 German companies and business entities. Germany has been an active investor in ASEAN with steady investment growth, with a recent focus on semiconductors, automotive, and electromobility, pharmaceuticals, renewable energy, and startups. In terms of trade activities, based on the available data in 2021, Germany's export to ASEAN was registered at euro 25.5 billion, an increase of 14.3% from the previous year, while import from ASEAN was recorded at euro 42.5 billion, also an increase of 10% from 2020. ASEAN remained firm that it must continue to grow and break out of the middle income trap to become an advanced high-income economy. ASEAN also recognized that development and economic progress must go hand in hand with the Sustainable Development Goals. ASEAN is ready to further foster collaboration with its partners, including Germany, as its development partner, to sustain and elevate actions to realize the SDGs, and pursue collaborative initiatives to improve the well-being of ASEAN community. Malaysia believes that the German policy guidelines for the Indo-Pacific, introduced in 2020, demonstrate Germany's deepening focus on the Indo-Pacific region. We hope that the guidelines will complement the framework of the ASEAN Outlook on the Indo-Pacific and promote sustainable development through partnerships in the economic sectors in the region. I would like to thank once again Lord Mayor Peter Koers, Stadt Mannheim and UTC for inviting the Consulate General, and congratulations on the hosting of the sharing session on countries' experiences in managing the challenges posed by heat waves and floods. And I'm glad that you continue to engage with partners around the globe, including Urbanize Malaysia, in this project. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sarkawi, for this really a great achievement that you had. And I'm very grateful to hear that you have already close collaboration with Germany, which can basically empower two countries to finally implement the SDGs on the ground. Thank you very much. So now I would like to start Urban Lab 1. We would like to start Urban Lab 1 with 5 eminent speakers from 3 different countries, Asia, Africa, and South America, to talk about the heat wave challenges. Each of the speakers have 20 minutes to present, and at the end we have 30 minutes Q&A session. Please keep your questions for that session. We all are aware that cities are heavily affected by the consequences of climate change that we already talk about it. All our keynote speakers already talk about it. Climate change has certainly impacted many cities around the world. We can clearly see it in the increased incidence of flash floods, storms, heat waves, and among the others. It is one of the biggest threats for our sustainable development everywhere, and its impacts disproportionately burden the poorest and most vulnerable people. On the other hand, cities are also one of the greatest contributors to climate change and luckily best opportunities for addressing climate change. With the full compression of the urgency required in addressing the present and future consequences of climate change for the sake of our collective future, different cities committed to transfer their cities into sustainable and livable city and achieve 2030 agenda by embracing an innovative and more inclusive approach to governing cities. One of the cities is Kuala Lumpur, which committed to transform the city into more prosperous development and produce new opportunities, as we heard from Mr. Sarkawi, for the economy, environment, and society with its ambitious climate action. I should also mention that I closely witnessed that KL fulfills this commitment. To hear more about that, now I would like to invite Ms. Nuriza Hashim, Chief Executive of Urbanist Malaysia, to share with us how KL addresses heat waves in the city. And now please join me in welcoming Ms. Nuriza Hashim. Nuriza, welcome to Urban Lab 1. And before you start your presentation, please introduce yourself in 2 sentences. Thank you so much.
Very much, Dr. Pulsa. It's really great to be here Nice to see you again. Nice to see so many familiar faces. But first, Assalamualaikum to everyone and very good morning, evening to everyone around the globe. I'm very great to see our mayor again, Dr. Peter and Dr. Christine from the World Urban Campaign. And most importantly, I'm very pleased to greet our Consul General, Mr. Farzami Shakawi. Very nice to see you, sir, and to have you in this UTC. It's really great. We've been together on this UTC for quite a bit. I'm Nurliza. I'm the CEO of Urbanis Malaysia. Urbanis is a center of excellence under the Ministry of Development and Local Government. We used to be called Ministry of Housing and Local Government, but we've actually changed our name just recently, but our functions remain the same. So as a center of excellence, our major role is actually to look at localizing the policies of our ministry, especially in areas of sustainable cities and communities. So today in this session, I would like to share, some of the work track that we've been doing in addressing climate change, heat wave, in particular. And I hope you are able to see my slide. Yes, Dr. Frisa?
Yes, we can see that. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So yeah, and my focus will be on how, especially the work that Urbanis does in these areas of addressing cities and the issues that they are facing in the cities currently. So a little bit of background on where we are, Malaysia, and why heat wave climate change is also affecting us is because we are an urban nation today. We are 78% urban, and out of the 33 million population that we have, almost 25 million people are actually living in cities. And this is not going to stop. We are continuously growing, and our urbanization rate is expected to go all the way up to 85% by the year 2040. Now, of course, when we talk about urbanization, we talk about development, and definitely that's when we also open up land for growth and to support the development of new cities and townships. And in that process, definitely we have also lost a lot of our tree cover. And in a way, that has also accelerated some of the climate change issues that we are facing locally. Especially we have a lot of soil erosion issues and some flooding issues, especially in our urban areas. And most importantly, we are also seeing and experiencing an increase in our surface temperature, of almost up to 0.25 degrees over the last decades or so. And of course, in urban areas, this has become more severe. Even in the last 2-3 years, it has become more severe together with the monsoon and the heavy rain that we are experiencing due to maybe climate change, more heavy storms, and this has intensified floods in our urban areas. And of course, heat wave is something that we have been experiencing. And in Malaysia, we look at heat wave as when the maximum temperature actually exceeds 37 degrees for more than 3 consecutive days. So there has been some monitoring done in these areas, I must say, and this is where our meteorological department looks at this trend that's happening. And we have, if you look at the map here, a lot of these heat wave situation, they're not just happening in very urban states. We call states actually here, and in some parts of the world we call it province. So in some of the states or provinces where heat wave are happening, it's also mainly because of agriculture activities and opening up of land from forest to agriculture. So this is also some of the issues that why the heat increases in some of the states which are not predominantly urban. And there has been attempts to also study all these heat wave characteristics that we have, especially in the Peninsular Malaysia side. This might be a little bit old, but I just wanted to reflect on some of the data that some of our researchers have been looking at in terms of the heat wave occurrences, the frequencies, and the duration of these heat waves, and also the amplitude of the waves. And I think I want to reflect back to cities because that's where the domain of my area is. And of course, from planning perspective also, because I'm also an urban planner. And this is where we see that definitely when we talk about heat or urban heat, definitely is very much relatable to the urban activity. So during COVID itself, we had the benefit of seeing Kuala Lumpur itself much cooler than it was before 1 year exactly before COVID. So this is a big reflection that definitely urban activities is contributing to most of the urban heat islands that we are facing in Kuala Lumpur itself. And of course, this not only talks about heat, but also talking about carbon emission, and that in a way impacted health and also the comfort level of living in cities today. So in addressing all these issues, especially when we look at heat, we relate it to also climate and the bigger agenda. I think Malaysia takes a very holistic approach in terms of addressing all these issues. First of all, we ensure that all our policy are intact, from the economic policy to our physical development policies to also our environmental policies. So if you look at this slide in particular, that is some of the major policies that actually drive economic growth, physical development growth, and how in most of the situation, we adopt a lot of the policies with regards to environment, resources, forestry, biological diversity, to ensure that it's embedded in our economic plans as well as our development plans. And not only that, we actually monitor where we are in terms of the achievement of these policies. So our economic plans are developed every 5 years, and our national development plans are also developed every 5 years. So in a way, at every 5 year, we are monitoring to see the achievement of our own policies. So, and what I'm showing you on this particular slide are just policies with regards to combating climate change and reducing disaster risk. And how the left slide is actually the progress between the 11 Malaysia plan, and how from that 11 Malaysia plan, we advance further to developing new strategies in our 12 Malaysia plan. We are now actually in our 12th economic Malaysia plan. So this helps us to see where we are, understand some of the challenges that we keep on having. Like for example, in 12th plan, some of the challenges that was addressed was the unsustainable consumption and production practices, the continuous loss of biodiversity, the lack of supportive enabling environment, and some of the constraints in the energy sector, and how ineffective management of the water sector. And in advancing sustainability, these are some of the new targets that we have set from last year onwards to 2025. So this is something that how we are addressing that. And it will then reflect on our National Physical Development Plan, where we not only address spatial growth framework, but we also address how we manage our resources across the countries, across the whole entire peninsula and Sabah and Sarawak, and also addresses all the natural disaster risk areas and how we manage them. So this, as I mentioned, you have the policies, you also need supporting ecosystem. And we also have a National Climate Change Policy Council actually in Malaysia. And here the council is actually chaired by our Prime Minister, and it looks at the implementation of the National Climate Change Policy itself, where we look at both adaptation as well as mitigation measures to address this. And the policies does not just get stuck at the upper level. It filters down and on how to make cities actually conform to these bigger policies. And that is where at the city level, we understand the consumption of resources is highest in terms of energy, in terms of land. And that is why, and all the problems are mainly at the cities, traffic issues, industrial emissions of carbon. And that is why we introduced the National Low Carbon Cities Master Plan and also a low carbon cities framework where it actually encourages a city to actually change their processes, change their current way of planning and development into one which is more low carbon. So because this is where Malaysia have already committed to the 45% reduction of carbon, uh, you know, 45% carbon intensity against our GDP compared to the 2000 level. And our major focus here is in terms of how we can avoid emission in forestry, energy, as well as in waste. Those are the core areas that we are focusing on in terms of where this 45% is. And I think our commitment have continued because we started at 35% and we are now at 45%. And I think this commitment helps in terms of driving the agenda from national to local. And this is where the framework of the low carbon cities becomes very important because a lot of this addresses carbon, and carbon is actually the major contributor to heat, and the activities of urban transport, urban infra, building, that's where most of the heat is also coming from. So I was very involved in this low carbon cities development. And now we have about 50 over cities that have actually started to do their assessment. The assessment helps them in terms of making sure there's a roadmap to improve the situation, to adopt better practices, and to also have a development which is more sustainable. But we also understand there are many players involved in development. It's not just the city councils that's regulating. We have the people who are constructing, we have the people who are developing materials, and because of that, across the country, we have actually established a lot of other tools to accept, to help the industry to actually monitor their practices, their carbon emission, their even the materials that they are using. So we have green building index, we have green renewable energy index, we have MyCREST, which is more used by the construction industry, the green pass, which is to regulate the contractors. So this becomes very important because we understand that the players are is quite a lot. And in doing that, of course, we also understand that on one hand, a lot of focus in on operational carbon. We probably are quite a long way in terms of overcoming embodied carbon, but I think it's a process that we are undertaking. But at the same time, we are also ensuring that carbon sequestration happens, and this is where we look at nature-based solution as one of the solutions that actually can be used to overcome these issues. So every city now, this is what they measure. Look at their urban planning, mobility, energy, water, building, as well as waste. So this is something which is ongoing. Now, we also want cities to not only look at it just from carbon context, we also use the SDGs as what our also Jendra has mentioned. Malaysia is very committed to the SDG implementation. And what we have done now is actually to localize this SDG further by encouraging cities to prepare their SDG cities roadmap. So again, we have a very holistic ecosystem to support the SDG localization in Malaysia. We commit to every 4 years for the national government to report, and voluntarily we also encourage all our cities now to do their voluntary local review. So at the national level, we have our National SDG Council, where again our Prime Minister chairs that council, our 12 Malaysia Plan embeds all the SDGs. And we know that climate change and sustainable development, they are two sides of the same coin actually. So this is where the Malaysia SDG cities, where all our cities now are preparing, looks at that vertical integration of policies as well as ensuring that the major outcome is achievable. So we have outlined and given guidance to our cities that among the three major outcomes that cities must achieve, the biggest one here is of course related to heat, would be how we promote environmental sustainability to mitigate climate change. So and this is where cities are already starting to do this in Malaysia. But not only that, we are having state governments also very committed to this agenda. So they are measuring where they are and preparing roadmap to improve themselves. And even this is our own city of Kuala Lumpur doing their report card and doing their roadmap and doing their targets and commitments to achieve this. And so what all that does is that it goes back to on the ground issues at the end of it, you know. And this is where most of the cities, we actually have our local development plan. This plan actually is the guidance to get our to approve development on the ground. So policies like, you know, ensuring green and blue corridors and connectors are in place, increasing green densities in buildings where we have started to have a green replacement policy where the plain area, you know, if the plain area is 1 acre, if you build the entire 1 acre, you have to actually replace it vertically, the whole 1 acre upwards. You know? And of course, nature-based solutions. Yeah. So what I'm in this very short time that I've been given, I think what I found fantastic here is that heat waves, climate change does require that holistic and integrated approach that is more effective, and you know it needs to be more impactful if we are to show any form of change. So yeah, that's in this very short time that I have to share with you, but happy to have further discussions and answer any questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nuriza, for this interesting presentation. And it's also nice to see that how Malaysia beautifully planning action plans and as well as SDGs, and how you are trying to push it to implement it on the ground. So I will just keep, in order to save time, I will keep all the questions for the end because we already have the session for that. So I will move to the other speaker. Now from Southeast Asia, we would like to move to West Asia, to Amman, Jordan. Amman is also actively taking action towards heat reduction in the city, and they did many interesting practices in this regard. Now I would like to invite Ms. Sajeda Ansur, Director of Project Sustainability Unit at Greater Amman Municipality, Jordan. Ms. Sajeda, welcome to Urban Lab. We are glad to have you also on board and learn how Amman manages heat in the city. Please, Mrs. Sajeda, welcome. The floor is yours.
Good afternoon, Your Excellency Lord Mayor. You hear me?
Yes.
You hear me very well? Yeah, okay.
Yes.
Dr. Christina, Dr. Baresha, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. First of all, I would like to seize this opportunity to thank the Mannheim municipality for inviting me to join this wonderful event. And also I would like to thank all the organizers of the 9th Urban Thinker Campus of Mannheim city for giving us opportunity to present and share with you a man experience regarding the heat waves problem and the measures taken to minimize this issue as a part of our climate action plan and our green city action plans. And as all the cities, we have our own plan and own strategy to mitigate and adapt with the climate action issues. I will share my presentation, or will you share it?
Please share it with,
Okay.
by yourself. Yeah. Thank you.
You can see my slide?
Yes, we can see.
Yes,
Thank you.
okay. I will not go through our policies and strategies. I specific today talking about the urban forestation in Amman by using Miyawaki method. This method focus on making forest and restoring the ecosystem, and this way how to mitigate the heat waves problems. Amman is the capital of Jordan with population more than 9 million. More than 30% of the Jordan population is with Greater Amman municipality boundaries. The population of Amman is growing rapidly due to immigrants and refugees. Around 1 million Syrian refugees are now living in Amman. The area of Amman is 800 square kilometers, dividing into 22 administrative districts. This is the map of Amman. There are a number of key challenges facing Amman. These include the rapid urbanization, highly population, urban sprawl due to horizontal expansion, limited natural resources, and also climate change. As our national natural disaster for risk reduction strategy, we prioritize the extreme high is one of the risks that Jordan have been faced recently, and also the drought and heat waves. The climate regulation and reducing the urban heat islands due to rapid urbanization expansion of building in Amman, which lead to reduction of green areas and increase the phenomenon of urban heat islands. Amman strategy focus on increasing the green area per capita and by launching the climate action plan and the green city action plan, which include the green infrastructure strategy in implementation the project. Because we know that and we believe that the vegetation have a proven ability to sequester and sink carbon and other GHG emissions and gases, which lead to improve the human and thermal comfort. The Miyawaki method, this with this Japanese method, it is we implement this method with cooperation with our partners, GIZ, which is funded this project as a part of a green infrastructure project, which cooperation with Greater Amman Municipality and BMZ through GIZ implementer partners, and our political partners, Ministry of Environmental, Jordan Ministry of Environmental, and Tayyun, which is the expert in implementation this Japanese method. The Miyawaki method is a start with soil engineering and building soil life, fungal networks, and biomass. Based on careful selection of native and drought resilience primary and secondary species, it works toward accelerating natural growth process of self-sustaining maintenance-free native forest. This method, it's only need 2 years for maintenance and taking care of this forest. After 2 years, it will be self-independent, self-maintenance, and no irrigation. While the method has been successful tested in dry land areas and desert, in Amman, this is the first city implement this method in urban area. The Municipality of Amman and Ministry of Environmental aware of need of the green spaces in the city and have already identified the sites by community volunteers and our local partners for the implementation supported by GIZ. Tayyun Research Studio, which has introduced this method for Jordan and implemented and designed, supervised, and planting, monitor growth and survival rate of the plants for the 2 years. After the first 2 years of this consolidation of the forest will be self-sustaining and self-maintaining. Parallel to the implementation of this method, a capacity development for municipal staff to enable them to take over the care of the forest and to include the cities into their irrigation and maintenance schedules. Through the implementation also of this project, we focus on participatory approach of all the communities to increase the sense of ownership for this size and to increase the awareness about climate change issues and specific to this way how it's a multiplier the benefits of vegetation. This is show the steps of our the phases and the steps of our project. Start soil test and analysis, species survey and potential natural vegetation, soil engineering and mound making, define a plant community and ratios of a procurement and native species, dense plantation and mulching. This methodological approach, the Urban Microlungs Initiative, contributes to improve the quality life in this disadvantaged area. And when we implement this project, we select the east of Amman, where highly populated, dense area there, and a lot of refugees there. We implement so far 3 native ultra-dense, biodiverse, and multi-layered urban forests were created in east of Amman by using this Miyawaki method. This initiative linked the Sustainable Development Goal number 13 about the climate change and the number 11, how to make our cities sustainable. The innovation of this method is for restoration and reconstruction the natural ecosystem to create ultra-dense and highly biodiverse and multi-layered forest in dense urban of Amman. And I will show you later the success story after 2 years of implement this method. Our partners, GIZ and Jordan Ministry of Environmental, Greater Amman Municipality, and Tayoun, Dibbin, NGOs, and community partners. The difference between the normal vegetation or normal forest, when you compare it with this method, you can see that it's 10 times faster and 30 times denser. This map shows the 3 sites of our urban forests. The site, number 1, it's Omar Al Faisal Park in Marka. This is the site before, and this is the site after 1 year after planting. The second site, it's an open area, highly used by the community and public, and this show after implementing this method. The first location after we making the mulching, about the sticks, make the soil engineering, fungal networks, and the photo show the site after 2 years of implementation this method. So you see how it's look very nice. The result for this way. Regarding the first 2 established Miyawaki forests, the following results are achieved. Total of area 375 square meters was transformed into a green lung within a dense urban setting. Approximately 80 volunteers and community members aged between 6 and 70 years old participated in planting. 1,200 saplings of 18 types of native trees and shrubs, some of which critically endangered in Amman, was planted. This is the photos of fungal and mushroom plants, which is we see it in the forest, and this is photos shows the implementation phases. The success story that have been is we see it after implementation. Fauna spotted in the Marka forest. We see insects, butterflies, birds, and mammals. We see also desert foxes in the forest. There's a general requirements for forest maintenance. It's regular watering for the first 2 years and regular thick mulching and for approved materials. No disturbance, no burning, no replacement of the trees or planting, no use at all of the chemicals. These 2 links show the first one, the videos that shows all the phases of our project, starting from implementation and the feedback from the community. And also we're launching a manual show how to implement this method from A to Z. Also, we keep our community on board with us on all the phases of implementation. allow all of them to share with us the planting and some of site activation, some of painting, and involve everyone, also the refugees. This was my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. This was a really interesting project, especially the Miyawaki method that you
Yes.
use, that you mentioned 30 times faster and denser,
Excellent.
especially in this time that we don't have in this era that we don't have a time and we have to immediately adapt to climate change. It's really helpful. Thank you very much. I will get back to you later on in a Q&A session. And I also put 2 links that you mentioned in the chat box if everyone wants to check the YouTube videos from this project. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now we are going a bit far to another continent, South America. We are pleased to have Professor Analia Pastrana, founder of Smartly Social Enterprise and the SDGs, to share with us best practices and how Latin American cities manage heat waves. What kind of challenges are you facing in this regard, and so on. Please join me in welcoming Professor Analia. Analia, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Farisha, and all the people that are following us in this Urban Lab. It's a pleasure for me be with all of you. I'm from Buenos Aires, Argentina, from South America, and it's a pleasure joining this Urban Lab and this the thinking about all the challenges that we are living. So thank you so much to the organizers of this Mannheim UTC. Happy to be in this activity this year again. So I will share my screen. I have a presentation. Let me try. I'm having a technical issue. Give me 1 sec. Okay, for some reason I'm not able to share my screen. I apologize for that. Let me see if I can fix it, and if not, I will do it without my presentation.
Or maybe we can ask Laura or Elisa to share it.
Okay. If someone, yeah, that will be.
Can you send it to me, Analia, so I can share it for you?
Yeah, let me share it again. I will do it as soon as possible. Okay, I'm sending it right now. Okay, done. Meanwhile, we're presenting. I will start my presentation. So first of all, from Smartly, we are a social enterprise localizing the SDGs and the Sustainable Development Goals in Latin America, and we are part of members of the World Bank campaign. I'm also co-chair of this amazing platform that it works worldwide regarding the implementation of the SDGs and the new urban agenda. And for this presentation, we have to observe what are the triple crises that we are living. We are in front of the trying to tackling climate change. We are living this post-pandemic period, and also this is times are global conflicts, which mainly in Ukraine. What we observe is a latent nuclear risk. It's in the atmosphere. So, as human beings, we are in a very turmoil times, and also in front of climate disasters that we've been living recently in Turkey, in Syria. So as leaders, as professors, as professionals from different cities around the globe, we have the moral duty to think, how are we going to implement new public policies, new legislation to prepare our communities, our cities to these challenges. From Latin America, well, we've been working with different governments and universities from different countries, from Mexico, Guatemala, Ecuador, Colombia, of course, Argentina, Chile, among others. And one of the things that we would like to share with you today is what is our experience in terms of working with local authorities, working with professors from different universities, and also with civil society, especially with youth. We work a lot with young people, and that mainly this is the population that is very concerned about what are the word that they are going to receive as future leaders. And so I would like to share with you. Okay, thank you, Elisa. Yeah, the next one, please. The next one and the next one. Okay, so I was saying that that's it. I'm going to start here. What is happening right now in South America regarding this topic? Unfortunately, we've been living during this month. Well, we've been living through heat waves, temperatures that in the last 60 years we didn't have had. So this is really affecting the whole ecosystems, and of course the forest, the animals, and of course the people in the different communities that are living from with this relation with the cities and rural areas. And one of the things that I I I would like to share with you is different scientist reports that are alerting us regarding these unusual heat waves that we are living in the region. And we, in the next slide, please, I would like to share with you different images. For example, this the one below the map is a picture that show us the fires in Chile, and how well, this is 7 times more than 5-year average of wildfires. And this is something that is really affecting, of course, the glaciers. It's really affecting the whole ecosystems. And well, politicians and the different governments are trying to tackle this, are trying to give little solutions to the communities. There are a kind of crisis and urgent fundings and policies to the populations that are living mainly of agriculture, because we observe, of course, that this is impacting in droughts. This is impacting in terms of production, and of course, as the other speakers, the other colleagues have mentioned before, this is something that it's showing us, and also it's shocking to observe, but we need to do something. We need to rethink, and please the next slide, to rethink the way that how are we producing and consuming. And this is a medition that every year the Global Footprint Network is doing, showing that the Earth Overshoot Day and how this is coming sooner every year. And this is started, or we observed that this is really increase the overconsumerism way of the population after the 2000s. And mainly we have a lot of plastic, a single plastic use consumption, and also this overconsumerism regarding textile products, regarding specific industries that are highly producing highly risk to the climate change in terms of how this is impacting to increase the ecological footprint. And one of the things that we are trying to do with the different tools that I would like to share in a couple of minutes is how, as people living in different cities, we are able to tackle this and change this way that is not really well, that is really increasing the other problems that we have. Please, the next slide. Of course, this overconsumerism is not equal for all the countries. There are countries that are more rich, that they have more resources in terms of buying more products, and this is how, in terms of earth footprint, the different citizens and the different dealers in the different cities are having different responsibilities. So mainly, this is how are we going to be able to shift that way of consumerism, but also at the same time, how the different countries are going to spread and share solutions. And I think this UTC is kind of that, is sharing the best practices in terms of tackling climate change and the impact, like heat waves, flooding, among other problems that we are having in our cities, in our communities. Please, the next slide. So in terms of right now, we're having the opportunity to rethink the way of living. And in Latin America, we're trying to work with the different parliamentarians, with the different people that have the role of decision-making, a decision-making role, to change this this mindset in terms of how are we going to be able to transform our communities to and create opportunities and more resilience opportunities for all. So this is kind of, we gave them a training regarding this, creating awareness of this urgency, because that's something that usually in terms of public sector, they have in front of them the only urgency of elections, and we're trying to put in the public agenda this topic. And also for our culture, Latin American culture, it's a new way of thinking in terms of middle and long term. And in terms of that, we're working closely with different universities, because we think and we believe that the universities have this middle long term vision that usually public sector and politicians don't. So that's why we are working closely with them and trying to prepare the academic ecosystem, with the students, with these future leaders, to prepare them to rethink the way of to connect with their community and to give solutions. Please, the next slide. I would like to share, these are the 10 principles for the city we need. And of course, we are working with the different cities regarding this new urban agenda implementation, and how are they going to create the opportunities, the tools from their cities to create this capacity in terms to solve this. One of the main issues, if they are not seeing that these problems, heat waves, flooding, among others, problems are not something to take seriously, and what are the tools that the other communities worldwide are implementing, we have a huge problem. So that's where we're trying to give trainings. We are giving them solutions, best practice tools, to spread the voice and to mainly create awareness in the leaders. Please, the following ones. I would like to share the next one. Concrete. I will share with this presentation the following one. Let me see if we can move faster in terms of. Well, we have different programs regarding this creation of awareness. We work with universities in women economic empowerment. This is one of the programs. Also, the next slide, we are having, we are working in terms of sustainable entrepreneurship. How are we going to be able to produce in a sustainable way? And in terms of this, I will share some different products. The next slide, regarding how are we working with different sustainable entrepreneurs and producing in a different way in the different cities, also in rural areas in Latin America, because we have a lot of from indigenous people knowledge, we have a lot of sustainable practice to in some way to re-implement, reuse. This is ancestral knowledge that people is sharing in their communities and trying to use and be more responsible in terms of consumerism. Please, the next slide. This is a huge platform that we are working and connecting different sustainable entrepreneurs, trying to, of course, be very responsible in terms of the use of the mother resources, like the natural resources of the Mother Earth. So trying to produce in a different way, this is a very important solution to not increase the damage in the Mother Earth. The next slide, please. So we've been working. These are different examples of the sustainable entrepreneurs. This is our woods that it seems wood, but are made with plastic, with recovery plastic, and this is a different kind of solution in terms of that. The next slide, please. So we've been the next one. One of the things that we observe is, of course, the different companies, the different also youth, and a new way of consumerism is in front of us, is increasing. And this is something that is very hopeful, giving us a lot of hope. But of course, we observe that the main issue to change is how politicians, leaders are accelerating this process, because we observe that in terms of youth or private sector, they are trying to give solutions, but the main issue is how this is implemented by public sector and the political leaders in the region. Please, the next slide. So we've been working, of course, showing how is this giving them to the cities different opportunities of funding, different opportunities in terms of connect globally, and because they don't see this as a specific as a specific opportunity for them, and that's why we are trying to showcase how the rest of the world is putting this on the table. The next slide, please. So we've been doing different trainings with to parliamentarians. This activity was in Mexico, trying to showcase and link the Sustainable Development Goals, the new urban agenda in the parliamentarian level. Because when we create a law, a bill, and this is given opportunities in terms of middle and long term for their communities. It's not something that a specific government is implementing. It's something that is for years and years. And we think that the main change in terms of creating opportunities is working with the legislative level, with the parliamentarians in terms of this. Please, the next one. So we have we created a manual and an ebook that to localize the Sustainable Development Goals in the parliamentarian work in the different legislative commissions. And this is a tool that is in Spanish, and also it was translated to English as well, to showcase how the different parliamentarians commissions, the legislative sector could implement the SDGs, and they have to think there are different projects of law, the bills, in terms of what is the impact and the specific and concrete solution that they are giving, linking the SDGs and also the new urban agenda. Recently, last week, I was in Ecuador, and the National Assembly, they made a national declaration in terms of the relevance of these urban thinkers campuses and the new urban agenda, and how they have to implement this also in their legislation. So we need to trying to link these practices from the public, from the private sector, from the academia, with the public sector, and with this long term view that we are trying to push in the region and to the rest of the world in terms of how to implement this in the laws, in the legislation. The next one, please. So regarding heat waves and how to create a more sustainable ecosystem in Latin America, we are promoting urban legislation to protect the entrepreneurial ecosystem, mainly protecting the bees. As we know, if we don't have bees, we are not going to have food. And of course, these heat waves is really impacting this topic, and we are working with different people that related with this sector, and also having different legislation in terms of this in Panama, also in Argentina, and we're working with different organizations, with Sweden, and sharing practices regarding this. And this is usually a sector that is very informal in our countries in Latin America, and we are giving them more opportunities in terms of funding, in terms of being recognized as a key sector in terms of production. So we're working in terms of legislation with different parliaments in terms of this. The next one, please. And also we've been working in urban legislation regarding sustainable tourism, how the different cities have to think that they're going to give and spread the voice in terms of their cities, in terms of tourism opportunities, but in a sustainable way. So what are the practices that they are doing regarding plastic use, regarding having a lot of people in their cities for a couple of weeks, and how this is thinking in terms of this. So we did this ordinance, this local legislation in a city, for example, in Mar del Plata. Is a city, coast city, one of the most important coast cities in Argentina, and we are sharing this solution also to different cities, trying to having this local legislation. For them, it was a specific tool to, for example, to work with hotels, with different sectors of their economy, trying to be more sustainable in the use of the resources, of in terms of water, in terms of the waste that they are producing when they're having different peoples, and when they're having an amount of different populations from different parts of the world. So this has been some close work that we did with different local legislators in this city. And I think I'm mainly ending my presentation. I don't know, perhaps the next slide. One of the things that I've showcased was the local legislation practices in terms of bees, in terms of sustainable tourism, but also we are working closely with the International Council for Small Business in we did this special issue on sustainable entrepreneurship, this new way of producing and sharing different practices worldwide, and in this academic report. So we're trying to teach in the different business schools in the USA, in the different countries, but mainly in the USA, about this new approach that is not only money, that it has to be the target, also producing in a sustainable way. And this is completely a new mindset in terms of capitalism. So we were working with this with Routledge, Taylor and Francis Group, and among other partners with this project. And lastly, I think that I have my last slide. We work closely with different sectors, and I think that this picture of this photographer, Dick Van Dugin, show us that what is the relation and the connection in terms of the whole ecosystem. And as human beings, we have to be aware what is our role, what is our responsibility in this ecosystem, and also observing what are the opportunities that Mother Nature is giving us as well. Not only we are observing a lot of crises, also we are observing a lot of people more aware of this and trying to work together. That I think that is the key point to share and to spread, and having this UTC is a kind of example of that. So thank you so much. Happy to be in contact with all of you, and open to the discussion at the end of this panel. Thank you. And thank you, Lisa, for helping me.
Thank you very much, Analia. It was really interesting a presentation. You mentioned a couple of interesting practices, especially how you are connecting entrepreneurs as well as political, how the politicians can accelerate the process of achieving the goal. You also raised really interesting topic that's supporting cities with the financial resources, that we can go back to that at the end of the session. Thank you very much. Now we want to move to African continents. We have two distinguished speakers from this continent, one from Northeast Africa, Cairo, Egypt, and one from Southwest Africa, city of Windhoek, Namibia. First, I would like to invite Professor Heba Allah Khalil from Cairo University. Egypt is also highly vulnerable to climate change with projected increase in heat waves, dust storms, storms along the Mediterranean coast, and extreme weather events. Egypt also committed to the climate change, to climate agenda, as it is finalizing the national climate change strategy to support the 2030 SDG development agenda. We would like to hear more about that from Professor Heba. She did many interesting projects on mitigating urban heat island in Cairo, and she will share with us the practices that she did. Please join me in welcoming Professor Heba. Heba, the floor is yours. Thank you very much. Welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Pariza, for the invitation. And thank you, of course, to the city of Mannheim, His Excellency the Mayor, and for all the organizers. And it's a pleasure to come after such a line of speakers. It makes my task easier because I built on previous work. So I will try to share my screen. Hopefully it works. And let's see. Do you see my screen now?
Yes, yes, now you can just make a slideshow.
Yeah, I did, but okay, is it in slideshow?
Not yet. I think it's taking a bit time. No, thank you.
Okay, great. So it's a pleasure to be among you today. I'm Hera Khalil. I'm a professor at Cairo University, a professor of sustainable urbanism, as well as I am a practitioner. So I do a lot of work a lot in urban planning and specifically in informal areas. So today I will talk about three projects between research and practice. The first one will take you more into like the improving environmental performance of informal areas and reducing urban heat islands. So the focus was about urban heat island. It was a collaboration between Cairo University and several universities in Germany. And we had Dr. Pariza as one of our partners as well. So it was a pleasure to work on this project. Our key research question was about what are the factors that contribute to generate heat islands, and how can we eliminate and compensate these effects through specifically low-tech interventions. So low-tech and low-cost as well. And our methodology relied much on participatory action research. So in this project, we start, of course, with literature review. We do a lot of consultation with the community. Then we generate our own data sets because data is not really available for informal areas specifically in Cairo, as well as if the data is there, it is not accurate. That's why we create our own data sets. We do a lot of surveys, measurements in terms of the temperature and the environmental parameters, and then also a questionnaire with a lot of the users of the spaces over there. A lot of simulation, and then we come up with some solutions to go back to the community to see how can we really implement some of these ideas. And when I say we go back to the community, it's not only the residents, but also the local municipalities in terms of the district chief, as well as the governor even. So some of the results from that project was to come up with an urban climate map for Cairo on the mesoscale. What are the climate hopes? So how Cairo is performing in terms of heat accumulation. And this map shows us that all the dark blue areas are overheated zones, and they are more into the very dense urban areas of Cairo. Specifically, this is the Nile, of course, in the middle of the city, and all the west part is informal urbanism. So urbanism that has been developed outside the formal system or outside the planning paradigm. So very few green spaces and very compact urban context. And in that sense, some of the initial recommendations were to keep the green islands in the middle of the Nile with no more build up of them, because they are the only spots where there is cool air production or mixed air production. You can see we only have on the east side only one park, which is the Azhar Park, inside a big city like Cairo. Cairo has more than 20 million people. So, I mean, that's an enormous scale. And of course, try to keep inner city green spaces. And some of the colleagues talked about the benefits of having a green spaces in an area to improve the environmental performance. And of course, generate wind corridors from northeast to southwest. Fortunate to Cairo that the Nile runs north to south or south to north, and this is the only corridor where there is wind potentials. Try to generate inner city greenery, but that's problematic with such a very high dense situation, and perhaps try to create some roof and green facade greening. But looking at the realities now, we have like the green islands in the middle of the Nile. There are so many proposals to build these islands under the pressure, of course, of the economic status and the real estate market, that we need to develop these into like new Manhattans or something like that. So there is always a pressure between whether to take into consideration environmental conditions or environmental situations, and how to address that into the urban development and real estate market. So moving from this mesoscale, that this is part that started in 2015, and then the work that follows is in line with that. We looked into the micro scale of one specific market space in Baba, which is one of the very high dense informal areas in Cairo. And we did a lot of surveys, as I mentioned, because of course land use. All these funny yellow dots are just vendors in the street, just to show you how the space is used. All the space is just an open market, continuous open market of different merchandise. And hence we did a lot of activity mapping, how these streets are being used, at what times of the day, how should we be intervening in such a situation. And that's the environmental measurements, the temperature and the wind speed and so forth, identifying certain hotspots where there is increased effect of that's the urban heat island in the morning and at night, of course, and a lot of simulation using NVMet to identify how people actually feel. So in terms of the physical equivalent temperature, or what we call the comfort in these zones, and to through these simulations and the measurements, we can identify where we intervene, and if we intervene, how much the intervention would contribute to improving the situation. As I said, we asked a lot of people about what they think about the interventions, who would take care of trees, or of if we create any kind of shading devices and so forth. And we came up with some interventions, some ideas of how to intervene in a very fluid market with flexible interventions, like even having movable trees, so to allow different or various setups for this market at different times of the day and in different also times of the year, according to the merchandise. And also how to intervene into buildings, creating light colors in the facade, to improve with the albedo. And we did a lot of community meetings, awareness campaigns with the collaboration of the local NGOs and the youth over there, creating flyers to create this more awareness about the situation and how can we intervene on the individual scale and also on the built environment. So as an individual, what should I do? And also as a collective, what can we do together? We did a lot of on-site meetings because sometimes people don't come to our meetings, so we just go to their space, hang a piece of white cloth, and we do our presentations, engage the local residents, specifically women, who are sometimes reluctant to come to our meetings, but if we do conduct the meetings over there, they are very much engaged in the process. And also looking at the youth, and we always look into our process, who are we involving. So as I said, we involved the vice governor, the district chief, the different departments of the municipality, as well as the local youth, the vendors, and of course us as researchers from Cairo University and also from the German universities. And we just wanted to try to transform such a situation into more of a green. We're not demolishing the area, but just want to make it a better environment. And we had some research outputs in terms of a tool to assess how to assess performance in open spaces. The tools are the surveys, the socio-environmental surveys, as well as the simulation and the measurements. And we also came up with a model of how to come up with tailored affordable interventions. So the different steps that one should be taking, or the methodology to follow in order to find tailored solutions. And also, of course, we came up with a climate check for compact neighborhoods that can be applicable to any compact neighborhood, not specifically in formal areas, but how to intervene from the urban design perspectives, as well as the sun protection, building facade, gray water treatment, plantation, and so forth. And to take you to the next project that the idea tries to take from the findings of the previous research. This is a research about urban microlungs, and we were actually inspired by the work that was done in Amman. So micro-urban lungs in Cairo, green and healthy corridors. This is a project funded by the Cairo University in line with the COP27 efforts. And our project in that sense looks at what are the guiding principles to design green corridors with the combination between health and well-being, of course, and green corridors. So how to combine both. Looking at public health, we have very, very minimal efforts looking at the public health. So how to create these spaces to contribute to the environment, reducing heat stresses, as well as greenery, of course, with all its benefits of carbon sequestration and so forth, and as well, and most importantly, to create these active spaces that contribute to better public health to the residents. And so looking at the green corridors, the healthy city, of course, and how to look at the circular city and specifically to regenerate it into becoming more and more in line with the carrying capacity of Earth, as well as combating climate change. And in that sense, our methodology also relied on, of course, literature review. That's why we looked at different cases worldwide, what other people are doing, what are the green indicators now, the health indicators, the work of the WHO, and how can we intervene in the sense of a tactical urbanism, so specific interventions that contribute to a much better outcome. We did a lot of work on the Greater Cairo region, and then we took on the micro scale also a district where we focused our surveys, interviews, as well as ideas for intervention. And the main guiding principle that we also looked at through our literature review is the 330-300 concept, where this is in the OECD area, specifically in the EU, of course, looking at how many trees you should be seeing. 3 trees from your window. There should be the nearest park should be within 300 meters, and 30% of the ground cover of the neighborhood should be green. And we started with Cairo, of course. From one end to the other, it's more than 150 kilometers now. And we used, of course, remote sensing at the beginning to see where are the green spaces, what is the low land surface temperature in our city, and also looking at others' work, like as you see from this map, that most of Cairene have less than or around 0.5 meters squared of green spaces per capita, which is very minimal. And it doesn't even compare to any other part in the world. And we looked also from the remote sensing part about the air quality, so the carbon monoxide, the nitrogen, and the sulfur, how they are in the quality of the air, looking at the work of the Ministry of Environment and the specific stations where they monitor the quality of air. Of course, we have problems with our air pollution because, again, of the lack of greenery. And there is a lot of PM10 into our streets and also PM 2.5. And going from this mesoscale on the city level, going into the pilot area, we took a district of 15 kilometers squared. It's almost, it's in the formal part, so it is not informal. It's a planned district, but it is currently being transformed through opening up streets, reducing greenery for the sake of increasing street network. And hence we did a survey or a questionnaire that was shared online and as well as on site with around 1,200 respondents. And through that work, we also did a lot of detailed mapping into the green spaces and also the trees. And we used OpenStreetMap because we wanted, this was the work done with our students. So we wanted also to have this data as open source for everyone or anyone to use it afterwards. And we came up with some ideas of also like a matrix of what are the different green spaces that are there in the city. If we have street medians, squares, sports facilities, also private gardens inside houses or inside the plots. And that's just an example for the space matrix that we were able to identify. Even the greenery that is on the facade was a part of this matrix, and how different typologies contribute or identify greenery and contribute to a better environment. Again, of course, we did a lot of stakeholder mapping and stakeholder analysis. Who is involved? How can we improve the situation? Who has power and interest? And we did a lot of environmental measurements. So in that sense, we did noise levels. So we compared what are the noise levels in the morning and at night. And these maps show that, of course, only these green areas are within the limits of the law. So the law at night has like 65 decibels. Sorry, in the morning it's 65 decibels, and at night it's 55 decibels. And you can see here on the left-hand side, this is the day noise level. All of the zones are almost outside the boundaries of the limits. And on the right-hand side, it's at night. And again, most of the area is outside the limits of the law or of the regulations. And this map shows the responses of people where they think there is a lot of noise. And most of the red icons here show that responses in these zones think that their area is very noisy. So this contributes a lot to their mental status and to their stress levels as well. We used a photogrammetry, to see the surface temperature in different zones. So, and this was done even in winter months. This is in December. The surface temperature is quite high because of the lack of greenery. This is one green space. But you can see the difference between the asphalt and the green zone. So there is a contribution, of course, for the greenery. That's always known. And this is one of the streets that we used to have a big green median in the middle of it, but this was completely removed and completely transformed the street to a hotter environment, even in the winter months. And this was also another area with still a nice pathway along the Nile. So it is shaded, it is nice, it provides a good environment, but there are spaces where there lack vegetation, lack shading, and hence still even in the middle of December, the surface temperature was higher than the desired. We looked at the physical well-being, so how people are different diseases that they have in terms of obesity, blood pressure, respiratory issues as well. And there are a lot of physical problems in the different zones. And also looking at the mental well-being, a lot of people are suffering, like 50%, around 40 to 50% of the responses, they had issues with stress. And also not only self-diagnosed, but diagnosed through a doctor. And of course, women suffer more than men. We looked at how many trees do you see from your window, and we can see that some areas, they have 3 trees or more, while in the northern part of the area, these are more informal or unplanned area, only one unplanned area in the area, and it has less trees. And this part where the trees were removed, so there are less trees now. And this is just to show you one picture of this street I was referring to. This used to be the environment with the green median, and now this green median has been removed. And there is, I mean, there hopefully that no more trees are being removed. We looked at how people rate the beauty of the area. So they think like the area, we found that the presence of trees really contribute to how people rate if their area is beautiful or nice or not. And also the noise level, as I said, the noise level is very much sensed. They sense there is a lot of noise and also a lot of pollution, specifically in areas where there is minimal greenery. We also looked at the spaces, how they are used, how frequent do you use green spaces or not, and we can find that some of the areas, like only 50% use these green spaces from the responses of ours. And also how are they active? Do they play any kind of sports? And where do they go? They don't use the green spaces at all. Most of the green spaces in this part is only for looking at and not really being used. Looked at the water budget. I will be faster than, and also if there is any potential for for runoff estimation or for rainwater catchment. No potential in that. Very minimal. Only 2.5% of the required water for irrigation. And also looking at the grey water reuse, there is a potential for grey water reuse in the area. The cost is still high, but the environmental impact is very, very much promoted. Some ideas for greening strategy with ideas for design consideration that take into consideration the parameters of green and healthy. And from the responses of people, they always say we want more shading, more greenery, and of course like street furniture or furniture where they can sit and be safe. So safety is also an important thing. We came up with some ideas from our group and the students, and creating like these pockets, looking at the Miyawaki method, the micro lungs and so forth. And now we are in the process of refining these ideas and coming up with a refined matrix of interventions for different reasons. And I just want to end my presentation with a couple of slides about a project that was really or in the process of implementation. This is a work with the local municipalities and the General Organization of Physical Planning, funded by GIZ, so the German Technical Corporation, in the local area development plan, looking into informal cities and how can we improve the quality of life over there. And one of the interventions that were identified, this is a project I was working and coordinating as an urban planner. We identified one hotspot that we can intervene with a green intervention to improve the environment and also provide some leisure activities to the local residents. And like this is one of the area in Shubra al-Khema. This is in Greater Cairo region. And we did some tests about the surface temperature and some ideas of how to intervene with the local material, looking at what is being used currently and how can we improve the situation from just a car park area into a more green area to be used by also the kids, the children, the families, and a small marketplace. These are just some of the ideas that we had. And I think I will end my presentation here, and this is just some of the outcomes and the publications, and looking forward to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Heba, for this interesting projects. There are lots of interesting projects and practices that you did, and I had also great pleasure to collaborate with you. Yeah, you mentioned nicely the connection between greenery and the people, especially how it impacts on the health of the people. This is really interesting, and you put the people at the center of the project, and then how this project can impact on their life. This is interesting, and of course you also mentioned involving and engaging the locals widely, because they are living there. They know what is their challenges. Better to hear them, engage them, and make our project in a more inclusive manner. Thank you very much. I will get back to you in the Q&A session. Thank you very much. Now I would like to invite Mr. Olavi Makuti, expert on climate change, Windhoek, Namibia. Windhoek is also struggling with higher temperature and decreasing precipitation. This would cause more frequent and longer droughts, more heat waves, and even increased flooding as rain patterns change. We will now hear from Mr. Olavi how city of Windhoek manage heat and what kind of challenges are you facing in this regard. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Olavi. Mr. Olavi, please, the floor is yours, and we are happy to have you here.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. Let me see if I can be able to share my presentation. Are you seeing it there?
It's, I think, loading. Just a moment. Now
it's loading. Yeah.
Now we can,
While
yes.
it's loading, yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much. It's very interesting. I've been following the different speakers. I think Windhoek, we are also very happy to be invited to this platform and share our experiences here. As introduced, my name is Olavi Makuti. I'm an environmentalist here at the city of Windhoek. I mainly deal with the climate change issues in the city. So I'll go through a very short presentation. I think my presentation emphasis will mainly be to paint a picture of where we are as Windhoek in terms of climate change. You will see in most cases we are still at the planning stage. Most of the activities are still under planning. Yeah, as an introduction, I think
please, excuse me for the interruption. Could you please put it in a slideshow?
Oh, okay. Sorry.
No problem. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Just to position you, Namibia, as introduced, we are located in Southern Africa. It's a very small country of around about 2.6 million people, and Windhoek is the capital city of Namibia. Yes, and the city of Windhoek is also a fairly small city. I've heard the presentations about big cities such as Cairo. Windhoek is fairly small. It's around about 400,000 people. And most government services are based in Windhoek, and as a result, this is the administrative and business capital of the country. Yeah, we are facing, as a developing city, of course, we are facing a lot of environmental challenges. Just to paint a picture of some of the issues, we are having issues of people not generally complying to environmental legislations. We have issues of exploitation of natural resources for people to meet the basic needs. If you see on the picture here, some children are carrying firewood for cooking. We have issues of high rate of urbanization. I think this, in general, in Africa, this is a major challenge that's facing most urban centers. In Namibia, we are estimating close to 30% of the population of Windhoek live in informal structures now, which is posing a serious challenge, especially in terms of climate change and heat wave, coping with heat waves and so on. And there's also issues of pollution. At some stage, Windhoek was considered as the cleanest city in Africa, but I understand we have been overtaken by Kigali in Rwanda as one of the cleanest cities in Africa. We are also, of course, as a city, we are inherently very vulnerable to issues of drought. We are located on the edge of the Namib Desert. And also, of course, climate change is a major challenge that we are dealing with as a city. Of course, in dealing with some of these challenges, the city have proactively come up with various programs. And of course, we have a biodiversity management framework just to ensure that the open spaces and greenery in the city is integrated within our spatial development frameworks and other planning tools. And also to cope with issues of droughts, we are a city that's prone to droughts. We have the water demand management strategy where we have various strategies on how to cope with a little bit of water resources that we're having. We also have a waste reduction strategy where we are aiming or pushing residents to move towards a green city. With the assistance of GIZ, we've also developed a sustainable urban transportation master plan and also an integrated climate change strategy that's helping the city to cope with the heat waves and, of course, in general, the issues of climate change. We are also looking at renewable energy. In general, as a city, we have a policy on renewable energy where we are encouraging residents to install some renewable energy. And we are also having a healthy cities program where we are tracing the occurrences of communicable diseases and how healthy our city residents are and so on. We have a healthy city profile. And also to cope with the drought and climate impacts, we are one of the very few cities in the world that reclaim wastewater up to potable level. Like today, if you open any tap in Windhoek now, almost 30% of the water that's coming from there is reclaimed water, direct reclamation. We are also looking at issues of artificially recharging our aquifers. I said we are a very dry city, very low precipitation, and very high evapotranspiration, high rates of evaporation. So as a result, for us to cope with future droughts, there's moves to, as much as possible, ensure that our
I think we've lost the connection. Mr. Makuti, are you still there?
Carbon emissions is almost, very low, very, very low. But also we know as cities in developing countries, our adaptive capacity is very low. So very low adaptive capacity. So we have to make plans to ensure that we are coping with the inevitable that's going to happen. This is also just to show how climate change is going to affect Windhoek. You can see if the global average temperature exceeds 1.5 degrees, the heat waves, number of days per year will increase up to 50. And I mean, what we are seeing in Windhoek now, I think we are already almost there. And if we exceed 2 degrees Celsius, you can see this is becoming scarier now, that it's moving towards 70. You can see also some scary aspects that the groundwater recharge rates will reduce by almost 70%. So this is just to paint a picture on how vulnerable we are to heat waves and climate change in general. And this is some of the projections we have done on the effects of climate change. And we know it's going to get hotter, and then rainfall is going to reduce as the climate is changing over time. This is just to indicate that Namibia as a country, we are signatories to all most global climate change instruments. Of course, the convention, the Kyoto Protocol, the Paris Agreement, we have signed all those instruments. And also at the national level, we have developed strategies on climate change, climate policy, and all the national documents also somehow address issues of climate change. And at the city level, we have developed our climate change strategy and action plan that paints more or less a picture of where we are as a city and what action do we need to take to become a climate resilient city. And also just to mention that we are also benefiting from partnering with a lot of cities. We are developing partnership now with the city of Mannheim. We have a long-standing partnership with the city of Bremen and other cities to mention, but a few that we are working with on various climate-related programs and addressing issues of climate change adaptation and mitigation. As part of our strategy, just to zoom in a little bit, we are looking at various focus areas to adapt to climate change. With regard to adaptation, we are looking at water security and efficiency. We are looking at issues of biodiversity. Of course, we have also take cognizance of the various ecosystem goods and services that biodiversity provide to a city like ours. We are looking at human settlement, which is a very critical issue of providing housing for people. I always say one should imagine 40 degrees Celsius in Windhoek and you are living in a corrugated iron structure. It will definitely act like an oven. Looking at disaster preparedness, And of course, introducing issues of sustainable urban agriculture to provide nutrition to the residents and so on. And of course, although we are not a big emitter, we are also contributing to the global mitigation efforts by promoting sustainable energy and low carbon development, waste minimization and management, sustainable transportation. Of course, the key with the city with a lot of residents with low literacy levels, public awareness and capacity building is also one of the key issues that we are tackling. With regard to water security, we want to expand our capacity. As I indicated, at the moment, we are reclaiming from wastewater almost up to 30% of our water demand. So the idea is in the next 5 years to push that capacity to almost 50%, so that wastewater literally becomes a resource in Windhoek. And of course, the issue of human settlement, as I said, we are now at running programs of mass formalization of various informal settlement, although it's a challenge because we realize that if the majority of our residents continue to live in informal structures, and just for information, these informal residents do not really contribute to rates and taxes for the city. So they are putting more pressure on the limited resources that we have as a city. And of course, our biodiversity programs, we have various programs of promoting green spaces within the city. We have integrated this now in the planning processes, where every new township should have almost 20 to 30% dedicated for green spaces and so on. And of course, the issues of disaster preparedness, although we are a dry city with very limited rainfall, because of our geomorphology, even 20, 30 millimeters of rain can result in flooding in some areas. So as a result, we are also having disaster preparedness to that, and also disaster preparedness in terms of heat waves, how to help our vulnerable members of society to cope with heat waves, and also how to ensure that the hospital and other health facilities can sustain that. And of course, very critical to us is the issue of public awareness, because I always say it's the residents who decide whether to keep the tap running while brushing their teeth or to close the tap. Those are individual choices, but across the whole wider city, they can have a meaningful impact in saving resources and minimizing our impacts on the environment. Zooming in a bit in detail with our adaptation program, we are looking at augmenting the current water supply to the city to meet demand, improve water governance in the city. With biodiversity, we want to look at the issue of promotion of conservation and sustainable utilization of natural resources, just to mention a few of the issues that we are looking at. We are also looking at the issue of strengthening. At the moment, our early warning systems in terms of disaster is not really strong. We also want to have programs that will look at that and strengthen that those elements. And food security, we have started a few urban gardens where members from low-income areas of the communities are working on community gardens on a pilot projects. We want to expand this capacity so that we can provide more employment to our people in the urban agriculture field. And of course, with mitigation, some of the areas we've mentioned, we are running programs now of waste minimization. We are running, for instance, an EU-funded program that is helping the city of Windhoek to develop recycling centers where residents can collect recyclables, sell to this center. The center then gather and compact the recyclables to sell to the bigger market. So this is some of the efforts of ensuring that waste also become a resource in terms of solid waste and improving the cleanliness of our city. And of course, to regain our status as the cleanest city in Africa. And also we are looking at the moment, our program of tracking our greenhouse gas emissions as a city is not really strong. We are relying on national data sets of monitoring of greenhouse gases. So these are some of the efforts that we are trying to look at to ensure that we become a climate resilient city. I think, in short, that is what we are doing as a city in Windhoek to try and become a climate resilient city and also ensure that we promote greeneries in our city. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. It was really interesting to see that you already you have lots of action plans and climate action, of course, climate change strategy action plan to move towards urban resilience. It is also interesting. Thank you very much for your presentation. And with that, I want to open the Q&A session. If anyone has any questions from our speakers, please raise your hand. I cannot see all the speakers. Maybe we can change the layout to see how many participants we have and who has a question. I cannot change the layout of the screen. Or you can also drop your question in the Q&A chat box. Thank you very much. Yeah. Yeah, I'm waiting. Any question? Yeah, Christian, please go ahead.
Yeah. First of all, thank you all for this impressive knowledge exchange. It's a tour d'horizon for the climate change challenges we have in all the continents and the solutions or the measures we try to tackle them. So first of all, really thankful that was compromised and concrete and very helpful. And I'm sure we'll also have it on YouTube that it will be rewind and useful for others, which is also one of our goals. Perhaps for me, when I was thinking about it, how to summarize it when I would talk to people, it would for me be the simple way: make your cities greener. Because when it's greener, you have a better climate, you have a better air, you have like Cairo showed a more mental health to the people. So I think this could be I wouldn't say a slogan, but perhaps also leading for us when we are making measurements in our city, because we just talked also via the chat. In some terms, we have built buildings or a new place, but for a reason we didn't have a tree there or something against the sun protection. So how we get this into the thinking. Perhaps one question, because at the moment we have workshops in the next month to know Lisa about the target values. Who was involved in working out these target values? I mean, in the end, the politicians have to legitimize them. But before, who was there involved? University, or was it administrations or institutes? That would be helpful for us. Thank you.
Hi, Christian. Really nice to see you. Actually, yeah. Thank you for the question. I hope you can hear me. Okay, because something wrong. Yeah. Okay. Regarding the targets, well, actually, for the 12 Malaysia plan, I would say, first of all, we have always had progressive targets that have been set, over the years. So some of these targets came from different policies background. And when we develop targets in our policies, normally we always have to establish the baselines of where we are. For example, one of the targets is to reduce deforestation, for example, and to set targets on how we contain development in certain areas and not to just open up land unnecessary. So that comes through a lot of baseline studies, and a lot of these baseline studies comes at various levels, not only from the National Planning Department, but also from the environmental side, from the forestry side. So a lot of times in establishing baseline studies, it involves multiple agencies, and then subsequently during the development on deciding the direction on policies, we normally have focus group discussion, technical working groups that are being developed in order for us to be very sure that those are the targets that are achievable. But someone needs to do the baselines first, and it either comes like, for example, now we are in the middle of looking at better distribution of growth within the country, especially in the eastern part of Malaysia, which is Sabah and Sarawak. So we have formed a lot of working groups actually. So it normally starts with working groups, and these working groups normally consist of multiple agencies, be it federal, state level, as well as professionals that are being brought in before we go into the actual discussions on the ground. So sometimes it takes quite a bit of time also, Christian, actually, the process.
Yeah, thank you very much, Nuriza. Any other question? Yeah, Miss Sajada, please, first, and then Elisa, please.
Yes, thank you. Really, thank you for all the speakers. Really, it was amazing presentation. My question, please, to Dr. Hiba from Cairo. You talk about that you implement urban microlungs, which is similar as we already implemented here in Amman. My question is, do you have a new technique in vegetation, or it's a normal vegetation when you implement urban forest? And what kind of species that you have implement there? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sajda, for your question. We did not implement anything. We're just still in the process of collecting all the ideas. That's why we said we were inspired by the work in Amman. We saw a presentation of yours before that, me and my team, and we were really intrigued by the that a city in such as Amman, with also water-stressed city, came up with this idea, and that's why we are looking at the trade-off between creating urban forests or spaces that activate people. So, I mean, from your presentation, a space that has heavy vegetation, then this is just for the improving the environmental performance or improving the urban micro climate, but also how to combine this when we want also a space for people to use and be active and enjoy. So we are trying to come up with more a holistic thing, but we did not implement anything. Still, we are I mean, in the process of developing the solutions. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Elisa. Go ahead, please.
Thank you for the presentations. It was very inspiring, all of your presentations. My question goes to Analia, because you talked about the ebook to localizing SDGs in the parliamentary work, and I was wondering, I don't know if you mentioned it, but you said that Ecuador adopted the ebook or the tool, and how many countries was it for the whole South American parliamentary work, or you said it is going to be published also in English language? So how many countries are adopting this tool? Because I think it's a good way to implement SDGs in the whole world. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Elisa, for the question. Well, this ebook it's already in English and in Spanish, and it's public. It's the public access. I can share with you and the audience the link. And with the trainings that we are giving to the parliamentarians, we've been working with the National Assembly of Ecuador, with the National Parliament of Panama, with National Parliament of Mexico, and also in Argentina. And we are working with those legislators that they want to implement this ebook in their, for example, if they are the chair of the I don't know, International Relations Commission, or the Environmental Commission of the National Assembly, they're asking us for having this tool. this ebook, it could be implemented in any commission, because the SDGs, as we know, are cross-cutting to the whole topics. But usually we receive more openness, or they are requesting us more from these specific commissions. And one of the things that we would like to do is, besides the training, besides giving them this tool, trying to make awareness, to create awareness in terms of having this as a cross-cutting manual for the whole commissions. And also we observe, for example, in the National Parliament of Ecuador, they already have a commission on SDGs. So we've been working with the chair of that commission, and we gave to him and his team this training. And this is something that at least we observe is starting. The parliamentarians are trying to look into this international and global agenda. So I think we have more opportunities ahead in terms of that, and it's public that we did this as a as a contribution in terms of creating capacity in how to implement the SDGs in the legislative level. So the ebook is public in English and in Spanish. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other question from the floor? Any question? Maybe I can ask one question. I mean, my question can be addressed by any of the panelists. I was thinking, actually, we research and plan perfectly to combat climate change, but as soon as we want to translate research and planning to policy and practice and implement them on the ground, we will face with many barriers, obstacles, like, for example, technological barriers, lack of knowledge and skills, institutional barriers, insufficient financial resource, most importantly. What are your cities' plan to overcome those obstacles? Are there any solution in this regard, or you think through global partnership you can solve a part of these obstacles? I would like to hear from you about this question. Who is going to answer my question?
I will jump in that. Yeah.
Analia, maybe you first, and then Olavi.
Okay. Your description is correctly at all. I think that was just summarized by mainly the whole scenarios that we are living. When we work with cities, they don't have budget for this, for consulting, for trainings. So it's difficult. I think in terms of global partnerships, we saw that, and we having these platforms of these global connections in terms of best practices, we can accelerate that. But I think the main issue for all of us is that when you are doing research, when you are collecting the information, not also from the academic sector, but also from consulting firms, the scenarios are changing so fast. So the main issue is you are collecting, but at the same time you have to be implementing, because when you are going to implement, perhaps that diagnosis change. Pandemic showed us that, because when in Davos in January in 2020, 2 months later with the pandemic, it was a completely new scenario that nobody expected. And right now we observe the same when you are having a natural catastrophe. We didn't expect that in Turkey, for example. So you have to, one of the main challenges as leaders, as professionals right now, is how to collect, doing research, but at the same time implementing. If not, we are going to be, perhaps you are going to think solutions that you are not going to be able to to implement. And I think that's a completely but it's really I don't have a solution. I know that we need to change the mindset in terms of the steps that we already have done, because the communities, they don't have time, and I think that's the main, people don't have time. So that's the main issue for all of us, to rethink how are we going to be able to combine this all this. Thank you.
Thank you, Analia. I think, Olavi, you raised your hand as well, if I'm not mistaken. Are you
Yeah,
still?
no, thank you. I just wanted to add, I think for us, especially in this part of Africa, the main issue that we have is the political buy-in. We have realized that a lot of universities do research, but the research is not simplified for policymakers to understand. So as a result, we have now, as a city, for example, the city of Windhoek, we've entered into MOUs with most of major universities in Namibia. Through those MOUs, we are trying to, most of the applied research to do with climate change and other environmental challenges, we are trying to develop policy briefs from those research in a language using infographics and other languages that a lot of the policymakers, if you give them a scientific paper, even the abstract, they will not be able to understand what's going on there. So for issues emanating from research to come on the agenda of policymakers, I think we need to build that bridge between the knowledge generators, which is your academia, and then your implementers of that knowledge. In this case, your local authorities and the government ministries and all those policymakers. I think we need to really strongly build that bridge so that all the knowledge that's generated makes practical sense in policy briefs and in languages that politicians can understand. And through that, it can then end up on the priorities of projects that politicians are implementing. We must understand most political careers are 5 years. And most politicians will do something, the low-hanging fruits, that will make them get re-elected after 5 years. So I think that's the challenge that we need to address. Thank you very much.
Basically, lack of advocacy is also a problem. So next, I think Heba was, I think next.
Yes,
Please
thank
go ahead.
you. Yeah, I think it's always a challenge. How can we implement some of our, research work? Let me say, like, there are two things. First, there's currently in Cairo a lot of implementation taking place, but it is not, unfortunately, based on the research outputs. So like what I'm saying, like they're extending the streets and they're widening them on the expense of green spaces. So we needed to do this research to show the impacts of such interventions. So there is implementation for the sake of improving traffic, kind of, but we have to show like there are environmental consequences as well as social consequences to what's going on, and to try to quantify this kind of impacts and link to the idea of the public health of the and we are not talking about an informal area, so it's not a low-income area. This is an area that is quite upper middle class, so an area that people require and expect to have a better quality of life. And that's why we wanted to do this research in a different context than the work I am used to doing. I think that now we are in the process of having a workshop where we will be inviting the city municipality to show them. And I also, of course, promote the idea of simplifying the outcomes for easier understanding or easier buying in from the policy perspective or from the municipality. So this is what we're doing now, to how to visualize our outputs, and it becomes not so scientific kind of, but more of how it becomes more understandable, and show that there is merits or there is potential of improving the environment, but as well as perhaps economic benefits as well. So that's one part. The second part is when we have, from the other side, like what I did with the informal areas or the local area development plan, the practice side is the governor is you're telling him there is this project, there's this space, we want to improve it, we can just keep it as a car parking, but there are other things that can be done, and this is, I mean, 1, 2, 3, or these are like interventions, or these are possibilities for that. And then, okay, how much does this cost us? How would that create revenue? So you have to also include some sort of creating revenue for that. We don't expect that the city will finance this totally. There should be some sort of public-private partnership, definitely. And through this model, they are more able, or they're more susceptible, they're open more to implement such things. And this actually project, the governor said, okay, we can do that. We have resources, we can have partners from the private sector, and we can try to implement such a thing. So it's how you bring people together, and also how to simplify science. But science is still very important to show that there are consequences, or there are impacts of different interventions, and how can we capture this, show it, and make it more accessible to the wider audience. Thank you. It's a challenge, I think.
Yes. Please, Noriza.
We don't include research actually in our organization, but we are more in terms of applied research. That means to say we are a center that works with a lot of whoever is undertaking research, you know, and we try to see how best to implement them, you know. So, I mean, maybe an agency like us is also a good model for other cities or other countries. But one of the things that we always see is that you know, a lot of the problems, they get very intense, and if we allow research to take, sometimes it can be too long also, and before you can solve the problem. So one of the way that we are doing now is looking at sandboxes. So we've been doing, like, for example, we are looking at last mile solution now, even though it's something that we promote it as a policy, but we have a lot of issues implementing it on the ground at different cities. So we've decided to embark on sandboxes. And when we do sandboxes, we bring in all the regulators, all the users, you know, all the public together, and including even people who are, you know, the police and everyone involved in the whole process. And I think this is another way of you implementing research work, because sometimes, like, for example, even if we have a research on a guideline for a certain subject matter, but you don't know whether it can be implemented well. So sandboxes are, you know, is something that we are trying with last mile solution now. It's still ongoing. We just started it for 2 months. We work with the academia also in this process, so that there is, you know, I would say a continuity of what we do subsequently. You know? So I think it is, we find it maybe a more refreshing way, because it is direct to the issue on the ground. And maybe we can bring in research that's been done, policies that's been written, all into one sandbox. So that is how we're looking at it. But I also say that in a lot of the policy making that we do, for example, in low carbon or smart city, and a lot of the initiatives that Misha is doing, we always identify pilot cities actually. So that's in another way of how policies or research become. A lot of policies are, in a way, even if it's not research, there is a lot of research attached to it. But having pilot cities as part of your process for implementation actually helps in getting it off the ground. So that is actually how we normally try to connect to the implementation stage of our policy.
Thank you very much, Noriza. Christian, please.
Yeah, thank you, Parisa. Perhaps 2 announcements and 1 question. Announcement to Sajeda and to Heba. We would contact you afterwards. Sajeda would like to get in contact and learn more about the microlungs project and how citizens can participate in it. And to Heba, I like also your neighborhood climate check. And we are also interested in how you are simplifying outcomes, because that's also a big topic in our city, how to get it on the ground, to get into the discussion with the politicians and the citizens. They are always saying, oh, this is a big climate change, all the things. And to identify simplified outcomes, this would also be interesting. Yes, and now my questions to Analia. You said when you speak that capitalism is changing. And Davos was also a very green Davos from the themes and the agenda. I know also that BlackRock and other investment companies are only investing at the moment in enterprises who seem to be very sustainable through their CSR publications or others. Is this enough, or should we make more pressure on legal requirements to enterprises? But I don't know it really. Is the capitalism strong enough to make this shift, or do we need more legally requirements? This would be interesting for me, how your opinion in this topic is.
Thank you, Christian. Well, I was living in New York for 6 years, and I was working with different schools of business there. And one of the things that I've observed is right now we are living in a shift between two paradigms in terms of consumerism. This outright way of consumerism with a lot of plastics and with making money no matter how mindset, and these new consumers, especially centennials, millennials, that they are asking companies, okay, how are you producing? And also we are observing greenwashing. Companies that are saying they're greener, but they are not. That's only a marketing action. So as consumers, we have the responsibility and the duty to ask us when we are buying something, okay, and observing and comparing and doing research in terms of these companies are serious, these fundings are serious in terms of climate change, in terms of producing in a sustainable way. And for that we have as we have a lot of tools in terms of connections, in terms of having access to information through internet more than ever. But we have this responsibility in terms of asking and requesting. And this is going to push bottom up and create this legal framework that we need, because we need to protect, and we are working a project of law in a bill on sustainable entrepreneurship, because producing in a sustainable way is more heroic, it's more difficult. When you would like to produce textile clothes with organic cotton, it's more expensive. So if you have to compete with textiles producing in China, you are losing opportunities as an entrepreneur. So we have to create the whole ecosystem to protect these sustainable entrepreneurs with this social mindset, with this, and to make more equal conditions to compete with this capitalism that we all of us know that they would like only to make profit. And that's the main challenge that we have as leaders, in terms of also we try to work closely with different politicians to make awareness of this. They have to create the legal framework to protect them, because if we are not going to be able to create these economic conditions for them to compete, to keep their businesses, they're going to disappear. And as a responsible buyer, if you are not going to have the offer, you only have to buy the stuff that with plastic, with no labor good conditions. So that's the main thing that we would like to change. For that, we are working with a school of business school, because we think that we need to create this new mindset in terms of business. It's not only making profit. We need to focus right now in terms of sustainability, and also in terms of funding, that we need to have more funds in terms of this, and also working closely with the stakeholders, the politicians, to create this legal framework. We have to work all together at the same time, because this is an ecosystem, and if you would like to change it, we need to work with all of them at the same time. And I think that's something that we need to work more together. And in Europe, I know in Italy, in Germany, there are a lot of countries leading this, but it's not that, at least it wasn't something that I observed in the USA. It was completely new for them. And I think this is a starting point. It's a starting. Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Nouriza, are you there? You raise your hand, and then I think Sajada, and then Heba.
No, actually, I didn't put it down. That was earlier.
Earlier either.
thank
Okay,
you.
please,
Sorry.
Miss Sajada. No problem.
Thank you, Garcia. Thank you, Mr. Hubel Christian. From here, from Amman, we are ready for further cooperation. And really, it's worth to mention that when we focus on the importance of public-private partnership and the stakeholder and the international cooperation, like our project with GIZ, especially in green infrastructure, really we achieve a successful story. And we come up with a very pioneer initiative and implemented here in Jordan. So this exposure and this good cooperation with international cooperation like GIZ, we achieve really a very good successful story, and we are ready to share it with other cities. And I want to highlight something is when we go back to the green and we based on nature-based solution, really we can achieve a lot. And also when we integrate the biodiversity in the decision making process, we can also achieve a social, cultural, environmental, sustainable society.
Thank you very much. Heba, would you like to?
Yeah, of course. Thank you, Mr. Christian, for your comment. It would be a pleasure to collaborate. And I also want to extend an invitation to all of you. I am part of the ARC 3.3, that's the Assessment Report for Climate Change in Cities by the USER. This is the Urban Climate Change Network, Research Network. And if you're interested to write a case study in terms of your interventions for climate change in relation to equity, development and informality, please, tell me. I will just post the link to the whole series. I am part of there are several elements, so I am part of the equity, development and informality, and it is led by the, Professor Diana Riker. I will also post her email if you are interested to write up a case study. The requirement is also only 1,500 to 2,500 words with a 300 word abstract. It would be very much, I think, welcomed contribution from your side. Also, if you can extend that to the presenters in the next session about drought, it would be also very interesting to see, because we were looking, we were mapping all the literature, and it is quite challenging to find successful or real interventions that take into considerations climate change and also look at the equity and the informality, or looking at the justice for different users and different, intersectionality injustice. So if you are interested to that, I will just post it, and thank you for that.
Thank you very much, Apple. Maybe you can also share it in the chat box that everybody can have access on that. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I will share it in the chat.
Thank you. Any other questions? We are right in the time, 1:45. Elisa, please go ahead. You're muted.
Thank you, Parisa. Sorry for raising the hand in the time we are switching to the next agenda point. But I had a question for Heba, because you showed a photo of the Nile Islands, and it was one of the parts you said is the green area, and it looked like it is a bit of agricultural area, and I was wondering if you are if you make a difference between like parks and agricultural area and forests, and because maybe they have a different level of impact in the city. I was wondering if in your research you are differentiating the different types of green areas in the city.
Sorry. Yes, thank you, Elisa, for your question. So basically, all the green spaces used to be agricultural land, and we still have the green the green islands in the middle of the Nile used to be or are green islands, except agricultural, except one, which has sports facilities, and that's why it has some greenery into it. In terms of the, the surface temperature and the urban heat island, there are almost similar effects of having greenery. Of course, if you look at more other things, like if you have so there is a negative impact if you are putting artificial fertilizers, that's another thing. But in terms of the whole urban environment, how much greenery are you having, we include agricultural land. But currently in the city of Cairo, it's only the islands and outside the boundaries. No more green agricultural pockets are still there. Very few. They've all been built up. And in our current project about the urban microlungs, we're only surveying gardens, parks, green medians, and private gardens. So this is because we are in the urban core, no more agricultural land. It used to be 50 years ago, but now nothing is there. So I hope I answered your question. I've put the links in the chat box, so hopefully to contact us.
Thank you very much for the link, as well as answering the question of Elisa. So now, because of the lack of the time, I would like to move to the next stage, which is wrap up this urban lab. We heard that all those cities with completely different context, geographical location, climate, and so on are exposed to climate change risk. However, cities are a key contributor to climate change, but cities have a unique ability to address global climate change challenges by increasing the infrastructure resilience, as well as increasing the adaptive capacity of the vulnerable people. And based on what we learned from different cities, I would like to wrap up this urban lab with a kind of action agenda. What kinds of action we should follow to successfully adapt to climate change and increase urban resilience. What we learned from different speakers, I think that we should concentrate more on solution-oriented and needs-driven approach with positive effects on the lives of vulnerable communities to climate change. So a solution-oriented approach helps us to develop goals and solutions rather than just explore and analyze current problems. So concentrating on solution is more productive than just concentrating on problem which is destructive. And the second thing is the priorities should be set through inclusive processes that reflect all the stakeholders' context, needs, and interests. We should include a wide variety of stakeholders from different fields like science, practice, policy communities, as well as vulnerable people. We saw it in some of the case studies in Cairo, for example. There were a wide range of stakeholders that are involved. The other thing I heard a lot, integrating indigenous knowledge with a scientific perspective and co-creating also with the people who will use it in practice, because the people who are living there, they know what is their challenge. So we are going to help them. So it's better we also engage them in the process of creating the solution, so it will be helpful for us to come up with the innovative solutions and help them to solve their challenge. And the other thing I think it's really important is considering these transdisciplinary approaches and incorporating thinking across boundaries of knowledge and disciplines that also emphasize on collaboration and collaborating with each other through different disciplines that help us to solve the problems in a better way than just concentrating on one discipline. And as today we saw in this urban lab, sharing processes allow for learning while doing and a stronger integration of emerging lessons on what is working and what is not. So therefore, learning while doing enables adaptation action to be evidence-based and increasingly effective. So like kind of sharing the knowledge and gain the knowledge, it helps us to progress in implementation of our solutions. We also, through a question, we also talk about that cities have a different context, geographical location, climate, but they're facing with some obstacles. As soon as they want to translate research and planning to policy and practice, they face with obstacles like legal and institutional barriers, political barriers, social barriers, technological, and most importantly, insufficient financial resources. But of course, there are lots of solutions. One of them can be forging the global partnership to progress towards achieving long-term climate goals and targets through transferring the knowledge and the skills, transferring technology, and in part raising funds, because some countries face the greatest risk from climate change and require international support to finance adaptation. And in some parts, we also heard that also a lack of advocacy agenda is also can stop or be one obstacles to not let us to implement the solutions on the ground. And of course, transferring technology through global partnership can help the city to better identify their challenges, communicate, prepare, manage any crisis in an uncertain and sophisticated environment. As well as we heard it also in lots of cases that transferring knowledge and skills through capacity building, raising awareness, most importantly, and empowering various actors for the long term, not only the local community, but also different levels of actors like decision makers, policy makers, local leaders, and so on. So sustainably enhance the capacity of local institutions, organizations, coalitions, practitioners, researchers to respond to climate risk is really important. And of course, when we are, what we saw in Cairo project, involving the local community, and of course we have to also, when we are building their capacity, we have to also talk with their language, common language, and try to make it as simple as possible to engage them better into the process. And we also talk about data accessibility. One of the, I think in Cairo, I have already mentioned that, of course, data accessibility is it's also a problem in some of the projects. You have really good ideas, but lack of data can be a big obstacle, but I think that we can overcome this obstacle by using different approaches that can complete each other, or using different global platforms to collect the data. Nowadays, technology made that possible. And last but not least, I want to also mention that supportive national and regional policy and incentives are required to ensure city-level initiatives have sufficient resources and potential to effect meaningful changes. And at the end, I would like to emphasize on taking urgent action to combat climate change and deal with its impacts, which is fundamental to successfully achieving all sustainable development goals of UN Habitat, and hand in hand through partnership as well as advocacy, overcome all the obstacles. So the clock is ticking and we don't have that much time to just talk and not act. So just let's take action together. So finally, before closing this lab, I would like to also express my gratitude to all our speakers and participants from all over the world for your great engagement. I really enjoyed our discussion, learn a lot from you, from your practices. And I would like to also thank Mannheim team for organizing this wonderful UTC. So thank you very much. This is from my side. Kristen, if you want to add something, then we have 3 minutes to close the session.
No, thank you, Parisa. Thank you for the cooperation, and also the team here, Elisa and Lara, and all the speakers. It was really great from the knowledge exchange and the city learning. That's what it's for. And due to these online meetings we are now used to, I think it's a simple way to get an exchange and then have further talks in person. So it was really great. And thank you all for giving your knowledge into this urban lab. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And in 1 hour, the next urban lab will start. That's Analia will moderate the session. Thank you very much. See you in 1 hour.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.